Plastic, metal, air, the 3D printed Airgun accessory revolution. Join Patrick and I in this exciting episode as we explore the hallways of this exciting additive manufacturing technology as it applies to our beloved airguns. Enjoy!
All right. Welcome to the Airgun Geeks podcast. My name's Patrick. My co-host is Bill. Bill, how you doing?
I'm doing amazing, Pat. If you'll notice, my friend Henson here, has a new roost.
I saw that.
He was complaining. He really didn't like the redwood tree that I had him stuck in before. And he really wanted to see the ocean. So I hooked my brother up and I got him a much better roost now. Funny story, this tree that's in this photo has always caught my eye whenever I've ridden the Pacific Coast Highway north of where I live. And it's just this jaggy, craggy, dead tree that just will not leave that coastline. It's like, nope, I'm staying here. I'm not going anywhere. But I just love the way all those angles kind of stuck out. And I've photographed it about 20 times, and this is one of those photos. So that's the story behind my new background.
That looks pretty cool. Yeah, I like everything. It's very California.
Oh, no, wait a minute. Now you had to go and insult me, Pat, for crying out loud. It's a good thing you're 2,000 miles away right now.
I'll call it Northern California. How about that?
Oh, okay. All right. I guess I can let that slide.
Yeah. The air looks a lot better than where I'm at down in Florida now. We had some fog and found out what that fog was them burning the sugarcane tops.
So not really fog, but toxic smoke.
Pretty much.
Didn't you just leave that in Ohio?
I did. Yeah, they said that the air quality was a 156.
That's like, great.
That's horrible.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. And it was funny because
man down.
Someone told me, "Oh, it's just the Canadian wildfires." I says, "We are almost at the most southern point of the United States. Where there's something else going on." So it was quite funny. But yeah.
Wildfires in Florida?
I don't know.
Man, that's some damn fire.
I know. Good wind.
Oh yeah.
But so how you been since the Pyramid Air Cup? I ain't seen you since then.
Oh, fantastic, Pat. We've got some interesting things cooking in the background here, and the Target Forge YouTube channel is reinvigorated and doing quite well. Yeah, we're having a good time.
That's good. That's good to hear. Yeah, it's finally starting to cool down here a little bit in Florida.
It got really cool here through September. And then the last 3 days, it's been like over 90 every day. Wow. It cools down in the evening, it gets down to like 60, mid 60s in the morning. But man, it gets stoked up during the day, and it's only supposed to go on for another couple of days, and then we get back into the 70s where everybody in California stops complaining.
Yeah.
It's funny, people from California, anything outside of like between 72.5 and 81.3 degrees, anything outside of that pocket, and they're like, it's this climate change. I can't
this climate change.
I don't know what I'm going to do. Somebody needs to get Al Gore a cheaper plane or something. I don't know.
You just dated yourself. Just so you know.
I know. Well, you know what? Yeah. If the white beard and the white hair didn't give it up, I don't know what else would.
Yeah. I've learned how to shoot with sweat pouring in my eyes. So
nice.
Yes,
that's like a survival skill, Pat.
Yeah. You go like this and you're like, I switch eyes. And I'm like, I can't shoot the other arm. So then I'm like, got the sponge on the forehead,
I mean, you're already handicapped having to shoot left-handed. Now you got to shoot with sweat in your eye. Gosh.
It's only long gun. Yes, I'm left-handed with the long guns only. So, but that's good to hear. That's good to hear. So I've been looking around at all the new stuff that's been going on. Airgun world and stuff.
Tons of new stuff.
There is so much going on. Like the Avenge X is coming out finally,
Mhm.
and people getting them in their hands, and people, I'm expecting emails from everyone. Hey, did you shoot this? What's up? How do you do this? Da 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 da. Da. But one thing I've noticed is a lot of this 3D printed stuff.
Ah,
It's like
yes.
a lot of companies are out there now, and I'm like, what is 3D printed stuff? So can you enlighten us?
Yeah, well, this is really the genius of what is called additive manufacturing. It's a technology that's been in development for quite a while now, but has really gotten to the point where the quality has risen up dramatically
Mm-hmm.
and the accessibility to people has gotten much easier these days. You can spend less than $1,000 and get a 3D printer that's capable of turning out, really reliable, nice looking parts.
Hmm.
And if you design them right and your process aligns with what you've designed in terms of the physical part, you can really make some really cool stuff. And I think that you know, we have a guest later today in the show that
Okay.
is actually a wizard at 3D printing, additive manufacturing. And he and I get into it in our discussion, so I won't belabor the point here very much. But
Mm-hmm.
um, the beauty of properly done 3D printing is it allows ideas to come to market so much easier than it did before. If you had an idea for a plastic part in the past,
Mm-hmm.
you had to design it. So you
Mm-hmm.
needed an engineer, you needed a draftsman, you needed somebody to document that idea. You needed to get that idea to a tool maker who was going to make you a big old, really expensive piece of metal that was going to go inside a machine that was going to take hot molten plastic under pressure and jam it into that tool and then make your part. Well, those tools are really expensive. I mean, even if you have them done overseas, they're still going to start at about $5,000 and could go up into the hundreds of thousands of dollars depending on the complexity and the hardness of the mold or the die that you're making, because the hardness of the die equates to how many shots it can take, how many times can you inject that material in it. So if you're talking about high volume parts and accuracy and complex designs, mold cost gets really, really expensive. So you need to be able to, that part needs to have a life or a sales path that is going to support that kind of investment. So if I'm company A and I want to make this part and I'm only going to sell 50 of them to the airgun community who happens to want to do this weird thing with this gun, that part's never going to see the light of day because
Mm-hmm.
there's no way for you to make that part at a point that's cost effective for somebody to make some money. Enter additive manufacturing. And now all of a sudden, you've got a way that gets a lot of really smart people access to a tool that can allow them to make that part and get it in the hands of us air gunners and give us something that's actually, quite frankly, really, really cool. And some of the most notable participants in this 3D printer space that I'm intimate with, in the sense that I actually own their products, uh,
Mm-hmm.
are Carm,
Yeah.
the magazine and single shot loader manufacturer over in Croatia. He does amazing work. His
I
his
will agree. Yeah.
his designs are really, really good. In fact, I'm going to call Air Max out. First of all, I love Air Max guns. I think they're amazing. They're very well designed. They are incredibly accurate, but
Mm-hmm.
they are so proud of some of their parts that it's, quite frankly, a little unnerving.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, the go-to price on the Utah Air Guns website for a single shot loader for a Catran
Mm-hmm.
is somewhere in the $80 range.
$80.
$80 for a single shot loader.
Wow.
And I ordered one and I because I shoot field target with my Catran pistol. I know how weird that sounds. But I got it and I opened the package and man, was I peed off when it was a 3D printed part. I'm like, you're charging that much money for a 3D printed part? This is kind of crazy, guys. Um, so I wanted to get the one from Carm because it's less than half the price. And honestly, it is twice the part. It looks better. It functions better. From a shooter standpoint, it is so intuitive. And I know this sounds weird to think about a single shot loader, but the way that finger engagement happens on the Carm design, it just it feels good to use. It's a well done design. It's well executed, and I have been practicing with that new single shot loader, and honestly, I don't know what I'm going to do with that insanely expensive Air Max single shot loader. So kudos to Carm for coming up with that. And I know you have been experimenting a lot with Carm magazines, and I have ordered them for my Notos. I also have Carm magazines for my Crown, my Woods Walker, and also my Air Max gun. But honestly, when I opened the package from Carm that I just got, I took the magazines and chucked them in the range bag because I knew I really wanted to get practicing with the single shot loader because when I'm practicing for field target, and this was something that an old timer had passed on to me from the field target world. He's like, it's not that single shot loading is necessarily more accurate because magazine loading has gotten much better than it used to be. It used to be you could scrape a skirt or whatever could happen in that loading process, or too much spring tension or whatever could happen might cause you an errant shot. But honestly, I did a full-on test between single shot loaders and magazines in my FX guns, and I found no delta whatsoever in accuracy. And that was sitting on bags on a bench, just testing the accuracy of the system. And it wasn't that the single shot loader gave you this miraculous increase in inherent accuracy. What it does is it gives you a moment to meditate. And honestly, marksmanship is a martial art first. It is just as much a martial art as any other. And getting that chance to meditate on that shot and going through the motions, opening that single shot tray, putting that pellet in, checking it before you load it in there. It's all part of the process, all part of that mental mantra that goes on when you're getting ready to make that shot. And the more repeatable that process is for you as a shooter, the more predictable your results are going to be on the field target course. So anyway, that's kind of digressing a little bit, but totally a huge fan of additive manufacturing. And we talked about Carm. We talked about Air Max and their ridiculous, very proud pricing. And who else? Orion. In the Iguana Hunter, I have some of his stuff that he's done, some of the stuff that he got in trouble for making at one point, but we won't talk about that stuff because I worked on some of those designs with him for a while. But additive manufacturing has come a tremendous way, and it is a great way for us as air gunners to get parts that wouldn't exist otherwise because of the cost of tooling and the time to market. Honestly, I've designed 3D parts for the GX printers. I have 3D parts for the Notos. I have quite a few 3D designs on my website, and they sell very well. They people like them, and I get comments on my YouTube videos all the time. Hey, love your 3D parts. and you know, even the cart that you have, the Bob to Rob conversion,
Yeah, yeah.
that uses 3D printed parts that I designed right here,
Hmm.
right on this computer that I'm communicating to our Airgun friends on now, um, and printed in the 3D printer. It's right next to me on my desk. So yeah, 3D printing is here to stay. It has gotten so good in terms of the, again, that price to entry coming down and the
Hmm.
quality going up. They're now at a place where you can get really good parts, but it is important that the design and the material match the application.
Yeah, and I got a question. Speaking of that, I was talking
Yeah.
to someone the other day, and they said that they bought these magazines for the Notos,
Mhm.
and they got a little warm because the sun hit them and they warped. Now, the person took care of them, but is that normal for these? You got to keep them out of the sun or anything like that, for them warping? Why would it do that?
Well, let's talk about the temperature ratings for some materials. I suspect that those parts that he got initially were made with a material called PLA.
Okay.
Uh, PLA is a plastic material that was actually developed. It was the material itself was made for 3D printing. And the reason it's so good is because the shrinkage is very, very low. So when you're designing, you don't really have to compensate for thermal shrinkage.
Okay.
If you mold a part out of ABS, you actually have to design the part bigger than you need it to be because the cavity in the mold has to be larger. Because when you shoot that molten plastic into that mold and then you cool it down, that part shrinks. Nice thing is it pops right out of the mold because it's technically smaller than the void that it
Mm.
occupied initially. But it you have to compensate for that in the size. So there's a lot of engineering and smart stuff that goes on to make a molded part. But the PLA was made because it actually is based on cornstarch, believe it or not.
Oh.
But it's not so much its sensitivity to heat, it's it gets punished by ultraviolet light. The
Ah.
ultraviolet light really screws with the polymer in some way that causes that really bad warping and distortion
Mhm.
in the part. So a lot of guys in this space will use PETG, which PET without the G is actually the same material they use to make soda bottles out of.
Okay.
Um, as you know, how thin a water bottle or a soda bottle has gotten over the years,
Hmm.
that material is actually pretty strong. Otherwise, there would be Coke and Sprite trucks leaking all over the place going down the
Yeah.
highway. So that it is a modified version of that material. I think the G is glycol or something, but it's PETG, and that material is better at outdoor exposure than PLA is. But honestly, it's a little more challenging to print with because it doesn't like to stick to anything
Oh.
except itself. It will stick to itself. So once you get the first layer done on the 3D print, it
Hmm.
adheres to itself really good. But sometimes getting that first layer down can be a challenge and really takes adherence to good process controls. But yeah, that's probably what your friend experienced with his part failure. Was it got exposed to too much sunlight and it failed. So
Hmm.
you know,
So
it sounds like the maker did the right thing and got him a part made out of a different material, and he was
yeah,
everything
he had
went
no more issues in the sun.
yeah, it was happily ever after. So
Yeah.
kudos to him.
Cool. So the other thing that I've noticed is, so I have one of the car magazines in my hand,
Hmm.
is part of it is very, very smooth, like awesomely like silky smooth.
Hmm.
And there's other parts that have the ribs in it. And then I pick up a different magazine, so the No Toast magazine. The front is smooth like before, but the back has, you could see all the lines, like a nice crosshatch. It looks good, but how do they get the two different textures?
So there's actually 3 different textures that you get
Oh,
with
okay.
3D printing. And they're controlled by well, there are tools, there are levers you can pull to help control some of this stuff. The bottom layer, the layer that is created when the part is laying on the surface of the bed plate, that part will pick up whatever finish that bed
Mm,
plate has. So if the bed plate is smooth, the part will be smooth on that side. If the bed plate has texture, which printing PETG is actually much easier with a textured bed plate because there's more surface there for you to get a grip on.
mm-hmm.
So it tends to like that more. Then that surface on that contact area is going to be rough because of the texture of the bed plate. The texture on the sides of the part, that is controlled by a variable that's controlled by the slicer. So there's the 3D part, the design of the part that tells you mathematically how that part is defined in 3D space.
Mm-hmm.
Big is it? How tall is it? What size is the hole? All of those parameters are stored in the 3D model. You bring that 3D model into the slicer, and what the slicer does is it goes layer by layer and creates a map for that particular layer. So the 3D printer nozzle is going to come over and it's going to say, okay, I'm printing layer 1. And it does layer 1. And then it increments and rises up a little bit. And then it prints layer 2. Well, those layers, the thickness of those layers are controlled by a variable in the slicer. And the smaller those layers are, the finer the resolution of the surface on the sides of the part. So that's the lever that you have. Now the penalty that you pay, right? Because no lever is ever all good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very, very few times is that the case in life. So the price you pay for less texture or visible ribs, as you described, is print time, because every layer you've just added now is more time to print that part. And if you're a guy that's trying to make money on his 3D printer, he's going to go with as thick a layer as he can get away with, because honestly, most people, aside from the initial look at the part and the feel of the part, if it works, they really don't care anymore, and they put it into service. And that little bit of texture on the sides of the part is irrelevant to them. So that's the sides of the part. Now the top of the part, that you can get into a process in a lot of slicers offer this option. It's called ironing.
Mm.
It literally works just like you ironing your shirt, right? It's taking the nozzle of the 3D printer and getting very, very close to the surface of the part and injecting that molten material very slowly and spreading it out so that it gets it as smooth as possible. A lot of guys will use it if they're making a logo that somebody's going to look at and they want to see that quality of that surface on the top.
Mm-hmm.
Don't have the luxury of printing it upside down. They'll go with that ironing step. But again, the other side of that lever is time. It's a very
Mm.
time intensive,
Yeah.
conditioning for that surface. So the part that you have that is a beautiful finish on the top and the bottom, I suspect I know how they did that. That's actually 2 parts. They both were printed with the visible surface upside down on the bed plate. So that took the imprint of the material that it was printed on.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they made the part, they just assembled them. So now you've got a bottom on the top and a bottom on the bottom.
Oh, okay.
That's what made that part different for you. And it's actually a really great way to design great looking parts, is to have control over that variable. Because you will get, even with really good ironing, you're going to get some visible artifacts of the 3D printing process. Not that they really affect the part at all, but they do affect perception on the part of the owner.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, the cart mag's he's got 3 pins in here. It looks real nice. Now, here's an interesting one. He's got the word Carm in his logo on here. How are people doing that? How hard is that?
Um, it depends on the resolution you want that to come out. If you get really, really small, uh, that can be challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and again, getting that first layer down, if the logo is on the surface that you're printing on,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes getting really, really fine characters to stay stuck to the bed plate can really be a nightmare for the guy doing the 3D printing. But if it's on the top of the part, then it's much easier because then it's where you're not putting material that is the logo, right?
Yeah,
It's in the negative space, if you will. So when you're doing that, it's just where the machine is not putting material, and that you can control really well. But
fascinating.
you will always be held to the maximum resolution of the printer and of your slicing tools. They're
Okay.
you can get crazy high resolution with the 3D model that you can't actually replicate in 3D printing, kind of like images, right? You could spend a gazillion dollars and have Photoshop and get 80 gazillion megapixel image. And then when you send it to your dot matrix or your, I'm really dating myself now. I said dot matrix, your inkjet printer, 600 DPI is about as good as you're going to get. So all of
Yeah,
that hassle you did with that image and all of that space is kind of wasted on a image that you can't really see at that resolution
yeah.
in the real world. But anyway,
Interesting.
that's all a function of design, really, and the design intent of the part and what you're trying to make. But we see
Cool.
a lot of guys making magazines and also magazine loaders, right?
Mm-hmm. Stud. Yep.
Stud has made a bunch of money making and selling some really, really handy speed loaders. I think
Yeah.
they're one of the best speed loaders in the airgun space myself. I was a very early adopter of them, as we'll see in an upcoming segment of the Airgun Geeks
Yes.
podcast, because I had the absolute dubious privilege of interviewing Doug at Stud and at the PA Cup, and it was a heck of a lot of fun to talk to him.
Yeah, I am a big fan of Stud. I bought the speed loader kit, and he's got a little shaker that all the heads of the pellets go down, and then you feed the speed loader with that, so you have a speed loader for your speed loader to speed load your magazine. It's
Yep.
a lot of speediness to going on. But hey, when you got a lot of iguanas in front of you or rats, you could do all of that in the dark, sip your tea, and still shoot and not even have to look at it. It's
Wait a minute.
very,
Wait a
very
minute.
cool.
Whoa. Back up, Pat.
Oh, okay.
You just said sipping your tea.
Well,
No,
I was
coffee.
trying
You're
to bring in
drinking
our
coffee, Pat. It's coffee. Give me coffee or give me death, Pat.
well, that's your American side. If I were to talk to Perry and Chris, they
Mm,
might be sipping
fair
some
enough.
tea.
Fair enough. I'll give you that.
So I'm trying to include the Europeans, you know?
How much more European can you get than freaking coffee, right?
Well,
I mean,
I'm
aside
a
from
tea drinker, so yin and yang, it's okay.
I mean, tell
We'll
the
agree to
Italians they
disagree.
didn't invent espresso and see how many teeth you're spitting out.
Yeah. That's funny. Um, so there's an interesting one. I don't know if I learned about them. I started researching them over the week. I've heard through the grapevine this place called Buck Rail, and I'm like, Buck Rail? What is this?
Hmm.
So,
Is it really cheap train tickets?
well, there's a website about nature. If you just look up Buck Rail, so you should look up like Buck Rail, Airgun, stuff like that. But we'll have the website address, of course, in the description.
It's not
Um,
going to be on your OnlyFans page, is it?
Only yes, no, it won't be on my OnlyFans page.
Good, good,
Because I
good.
only have one fan, you know.
I
So
want my
Buck
$10
Rail,
back.
checks in the mail. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
for your refund.
Mm.
Um, so Buck Rail, I found out, is a veteran-owned business
No, that's cool. I love that.
that started by sort of accident, and he was making some stuff for I think it was a I forget what air gun it is. There's a Buck something or other, but I don't know if that's how he got his number. But he made it for his family, and then it started growing, so it's the whole family's involved.
Hmm.
So it's a family business. If you, I went on his website to see who I could find out who the guy's name is. The owner's name is Terry, and he has a gentleman that's helping him for, we'll call it customer service and whatnot. It's Chris. So I was like, very interesting. Great about page, all of that. He has got so much stuff, Bill. It's crazy.
Nice.
Suppressors, add-ons to all sorts of stuff. He just made this crazy AR-15 setup that takes your Notos and gives it an AR-15, I think, foldable stock. You're adding a lot to your cost of your Notos, but it's a pretty good. I think it's a pretty good idea. It's so far been a big talk in all of the Notos groups on Facebook. So,
I did that, and my cost was $23.
well, there you go.
But it was a very shady Chinese part that made that
Mm.
possible. In fact, they got hit with the no stick because they were selling a AR-15 folding stock adapter copy, and they were calling it a bicycle part
Oh,
to hide. But yeah, I that went on my Notos shortly after it came out of the box. But yeah.
yeah. This is the whole rear stock assembly. So
Hmm.
worth looking at. I don't know much about it. I don't
Oh
even know how
yeah.
much it is, but looks like a pretty good thing. And looking at pictures and having a couple conversations with people about Buck Rail, pretty good stuff. And like he's a so far, and we're gonna reach out to him definitely. Uh, he makes a good product, and if something happens, he has been known to take care of people. So I would hope, being a veteran business, honor and integrity and good ethics is number one. So Buck Rail's pretty cool. We'll have to see if we
That's
can get
awesome.
them on the show.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of stuff. A
You know,
lot of stuff.
you might want to check and see if he's interested in doing some sponsorship too, because that would be
We'll
good.
see. We'll see. What else has been 3D printed? Well, the one thing I want to talk about, something that you made, is the Doomajiggy for
The
the notes.
doohickey. The
The
doohickey.
doohickey,
Yeah.
doohickey, Doomajiggy, potato patata. So since we talked about Carm, might you be making one that holds the little Carm magazines?
I Pat, I keep falling down these damn rabbit holes. Um I got that stupid CS4 and I have
Oh,
been torturing that thing trying to
yeah.
break it, and it's been a fantastic little printer, or the little compressor rather. And that content has been doing really well. So
Mhm.
obviously
I agree.
there's a hunger there for that content, and that's where I've been spending a lot of time. I've also been trying to develop several different new products under the Target Forge brand that will be coming to market hopefully soonish.
Ooh.
And I am interested in talking to some partners to help me develop those ideas and get them moving. So if you're interested in investing in that kind of stuff, I'm eager to talk to you and find out what we can do to work together. But there's some pretty neat ideas, and I think they have some applications even outside of air gunning.
Mhm.
Anyway, yeah, I gotta stop getting sidetracked with that stuff because I get I get hit in the feel me's, right?
Mhm.
I get an
Mhm.
old timer on my YouTube channel and he says, wow, I saw how you put that hour meter on the compressor, but I don't have the I don't have the skills to cut a hole that precisely in a piece of metal. So I'll never have one. And that tugs on the old heartstrings. And I'm like, well, maybe I can come up with a way that I can
Mhm.
make a stick-on version for you so that, even people who don't want to hack away on their compressor can add an hour meter. Because I really believe that having an hour meter on
Mhm.
something that needs regular service makes good sense because you're not going to keep track of how much you used it.
No,
I bet your
no.
fancy new Bauer can tell you how many hours it's been run at any given time so that you know when it's time to rebuild the pump because it's a pump.
It is literally called the B timer. And it tells you your how many hours it's totally run from its
Mm-hmm.
first life, 500 hour service.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's a 1,000 hour service. 1,000? Yeah, 1,000 hour service. And then there's a 5,000 hour service. So I'm like, okay. Uh, the key is change the oil. I don't know if I'll go 500 hours, but I will definitely do a
Depends on
year.
the oil. If you're using something like Seco Lube, you can easily get that many hours out of an
Yeah.
oil change.
This is the oil that they said run in it.
Probably twice that.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's their synthetic oil that they're running. So, hey, if they recommend it, they'll do it.
oh yeah,
And
absolutely, absolutely. The cost is trivial compared to the cost of not doing it. Um,
correct. Yeah, and that thing's air cooled. I got it up and running, and I mean, I lucked out on finding this thing. And I
mhm,
have to say, it was because I reached out to Joel from Palm Beach Airguns, and he says, you know what, I might know someone, and I stole it. I mean, he gave me a whole bunch of cartridges, oil, molecular sieve, carbon. What is that?
activated
Activated
carbon.
carbon. I
Mhm.
don't need that.
No.
I mean, it smells good, but whatever, or takes the smell out. But I was like, how much? And it's even got a purge on it and a one-way valve, so you just turn it on. Now, one thing I did learn, Bill, the funny thing is you don't go too fast because it will then go down the line to the pressure shutoff switch and shut the compressor off.
Hmm.
I also learned as a funny here that when it's done filling, the blow off valves
The
blow
unload,
everything off. So
the
that was a
unloader.
come to Jesus moment that I had and
Mhm.
had to go change some shorts
Hmm.
because it was right next to me. Luckily, I had it running off to the side, the two hoses. Um, but then I was like, wait a minute, how much moisture is left in there? Because it's very humid here in Florida. Nothing came out.
Hmm.
I was like, that blew everything off. And then I just had to bleed the line and it smelled wonderful and there was zero moisture. So I was excited about that. So get yourself a good compressor and maybe luck out and get a Bauer. Yeah, right. That was a diamond in the rough.
I'm still going to recommend for our average shooters out there, ones who are not building a iguana hunting empire
Correct.
in southern Florida. The GX line of compressors is
Totally
absolutely
agree.
great choice, but um, that is pretty cool. Now, I what else have we not covered in the additive manufacturing space for air guns? Are we ready to move on to our guest?
Yeah, I think we've covered the big one so far. And uh it I was excited that you were able to get David from Black Arts Designs
Mm-hmm.
off to the side while the competition was going on and talk about his passion. Because when you guys watched the video, I was impressed. I was
Yeah.
like, wow, he doesn't work a minute throughout the day. He absolutely loves what he's doing.
Yep. Absolutely. I could not agree more. And it was absolutely a joy to get a moment to capture David's story. And Pat, let's take a look at that video right about now. Welcome, Airgun Geeks fans. Today I have the unique opportunity to talk with the king of Black Arts Design. And he's going to first start by introducing himself and telling us who he is and what he does in the airgun space. And then we're going to try and pry into his roots and find out why airguns and why this world that we all love. So take it away.
So David Blakely with Black Arts Design. We make airgun accessories using additive manufacturing or 3D printing. And yeah, that's
So
what we do.
What kind of products are you making for the airgun world right now? I know you've got a lot of stuff in development, so we can't talk about those.
Yeah.
Tell us about the stuff that you
We
are.
have a variety of things. I mean, we make a lot of barrel bands because that's what people ask us for. It's kind of what we're known for. And we put a lot of effort into making those barrel bands fit, look good,
Right.
and perform right. But we also make scope wheel, parallax scope wheels. We have one out now, which is a little bit different. It's an asymmetrical design. We have for element optics, and we have them for ride-on optics.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And we have
Very
two
good.
more coming out that are more of a traditional wheel. We also have some magazine holders, some parts for the Legacy Umarex. So yeah, we make a variety of things, but you know, barrel bands are kind of what we fell into accidentally.
So I'm going to guess here that barrel bands are probably your leading product as far as total sales.
They are, definitely they are.
And which gun is that? The Avenger that is leading the way?
Absolutely, absolutely. The Air Adventure, the Air Venturi Avenger is our #1 selling product. Next in line would be our magnetic buttstock closure for the AEA, HP, and SF.
Ah, yeah.
So those are our two like highest selling products.
Yeah.
You know? But then we have the FX product line, which does well too. So, but the Air Venturi Avenger barrel band system is our #1.
So it sounds like your niche in this airgun world is really fixing the design things that got left behind from the manufacturers and kind of elevating that usability.
Yes. I mean, that's really where we try to focus is we look at a gun and we think, what could be done different to improve it?
Right.
And we listen to shooters. I mean, I get emails constantly of people saying, hey, do you have this? Or what about making this? And we have actually our product development list, which is constantly growing and we can't keep up with it. And that is all based on what customers request. Or what
Those sound like first world problems.
Yeah. Right.
That's awesome. That is so good to hear.
But what we did with the Air Venturi Avenger is when we first took a look at that gun, we looked at the barrel band they had on it. And the way they designed that is the stock, which is not really sturdy, the wood stock is,
Right.
but the plastic stock, and the barrel band ties into the stock. Then it ties into the middle air tube or the upper air tube, and then it ties to the barrel through the shroud. So any movement on the stock is fed straight up to the barrel. So if you rest it on a post,
sensitivity.
correct. Correct.
Yeah.
So what we did was we took the stock barrel band and basically broke it apart, divorced the stock and the lower air tube from the upper air tube and the barrel. So we have a component that ties the stock to the lower air tube because that secures those two together. And then our barrel band attaches to the upper air tube and the barrel.
Nice.
So now that communication of energy isn't fed up to the
getting
shroud.
isolation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's on a firearm, that would be equivalent to like a free-floating barrel.
In a way, yes. Same
I mean, you're just isolating it from the stock.
Correct.
And the input from the stock. That's fantastic.
Exactly. And if you look at the Avenger X, they did that. So they changed the way that design was on the Avenger X and separated that stock from the shroud.
So I'm in engineering as well. I have been my whole life. And one of the things I always applauded a company that I think was brilliant in engineering is Honda.
Absolutely.
Honda was amazing at watching the market. And, you know, their Goldwing is a perfect example, right? When they first brought the Goldwing over, it was just a huge motorcycle.
Okay.
Right.
And they gave it to the American market. The American market loved it. They're like, 1,000 cc's? Oh, hell yes. Give me one of those. And they started to notice what people were putting on those bikes. Oh, they're putting fairings on it.
Right.
And they're putting bags on it. So the next generation had fairings and it had bags. and then stereos, and then, GPS systems, and all of that stuff evolved over time. But they always watched what people were doing and using it for,
Right.
and then integrated that. And that's really what the service that you're providing right now is kind of accelerating that curve for the airgun world. And thank you very much for that.
That's what we try to do, and that's what all of these companies are trying to do is give people products and equipment that makes their shooting life better and gets people excited about it. It's the customer is what drives all of us.
Yeah.
I can make the coolest thing in the world, but if someone doesn't want it, it's just cool for me.
Yeah.
So we do listen to our customers. We get calls a lot. We get emails a lot. People tell us what they like, what they don't like, and we always try to tweak and change.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's very good.
Yeah. We really our motto is there's no such thing as good enough. And that's not have a Coke and a smile.
Right.
It's not meant to necessarily sell a product.
Right.
It's meant to hold me personally accountable.
Yeah.
But if I say there's no such thing as good enough, I can't design something and say to myself, it's passable. No, there's no such thing as good enough. So we really down to when I'm CAD modeling and I print something out, I don't like the way a curve blends in together. I'm back there correcting it.
Right.
And it might take me 2 days because it's not easy to make these organic shapes that we try to make. So
I mean,
engineers
have long been the enemy of project management, right?
Yeah.
It's always been a battle.
Right.
And we generally hate marketing people as well because they make promises that don't live in the real world. And engineering is always battling that. But, that whole battle between when is the project done and when is the engineer happy?
Right.
That takes some understanding to know where that is.
It does.
You guys have done a great job with managing that.
Yeah, and there are parameters, right? So one of the things that depending on what material you're using or process, when you go down that road, it's locked in place.
Right.
And making a change costs a lot of money.
Sure.
One of the nice things about additive manufacturing, you can make a change.
Tooling.
You can make a change and make that adjustment very quickly.
Yes.
So, we take the time to get it right the first time, but we always have that opportunity to adjust something or make a correction to something. So it's a nice thing about additive manufacturing is that quick turnaround time. Your lead times are.
So for Target Forge, what additive manufacturing has done is transformed our prototyping process, where we are able to just iterate like crazy and get to a good place.
Right.
I'll tell you what I am learning right now is transitioning those designs, because I've tried to keep in my head, this has got to be a tool-friendly design.
Right.
And you can definitely design crap with a 3D printer that is impossible to injection mold.
Right. Or to machine.
Or the cost of the tool is so ridiculously high
Right.
that you're never going to recoup that cost in our market space.
Yeah.
Because you might sell 500 of something or 1,000 of something. You're never going to be in the million of something.
That's right.
In the airgun space. So
That's right.
additive manufacturing has really been amazing and transformative for us developing that stuff.
And you won't find an engineering company that doesn't utilize a 3D printer. You won't find a manufacturing company that doesn't utilize a 3D printer.
Yeah.
But you're right in the sense that you can 3D print things, then making in another process or material just isn't possible, or the cost would be astronomical and would only be viable if you're sending it to Mars.
Right.
Right. And the government's paying for it.
Exactly.
So, and the other thing that we really try to focus on too, and that's why our product line will never go in a certain direction as far as 3D printed products. For example, we just came out with a grip adapter for the AEA HP and SF series. That is aluminum, because we could 3D print it, but the failure rate is too much of a risk.
Plus,
it's not strong enough in a 3D printed material using materials that are affordable. PEEK, you could probably do it, but then that part would be more expensive than aluminum.
My only personal opinion on that is I am a big fan of the human interface and the human interface experience. And honestly, if I'm grabbing onto the right end of the firearm there's a feel I want, and that feel likely isn't going to come from a 3D printed part.
Correct.
It's within reason. I mean, I'm sure you could get crazy with some, inlaid TPU to make it feel better.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's not going to be producible in scale.
Right.
And, aluminum, wood, things like that, things that we're used to interfacing with.
Right.
Are more comfortable to us.
Yes. There's no doubt about it that when you're looking at, we want to make this part because it's a value to a shooter.
Right.
Well, we could 3D print it, but that's not always the best material to use. So
Exactly.
just because you can 3D print it doesn't mean you should.
Correct.
And we are going to be branching out. So we've already got the grip adapter. We've got another component in the lineup that's aluminum.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And we've got a third material in process that's coming. That's really, 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 really cool.
Nice.
So it's a mountain to climb to get there, but we are laying the groundwork to get those things going this year.
So without divulging anything, your metal processes, are they mostly CNC right now?
Yes.
And so no investment casting, no,
not at this time.
Yeah.
No. I mean, that's always viable, but it's not something we're really familiar with.
It's looking more to scale, I think, when you start looking at those.
Yeah.
It really makes sense.
Yeah, and most of our stuff is small. It's little small components. We're going to be branching out to some things that are a little bit larger, but those won't be 3D printed.
So you brought us to a really interesting point in this conversation, where I think it's time to talk about the elephant in the room.
Okay.
And that is this kind of misperception of 3D printing as a process. And what's important about that is some people think, oh, it's 3D printed, it's junk. And that is absolutely not true.
That's correct.
If you are a proper design, it's designed with 3D printing in mind,
Yep.
and you understand the parameters in your slicer.
That's right.
And the slicer, by the way, is the part that takes your 3D model that you created and actually makes it producible on your 3D printer. That part of it is integral to the integrity of the design.
Yes.
And it's as much a part of the design of the part as the design of the part.
Correct. A functional part has to be designed to be 3D printed.
Correct.
You can't necessarily take a component that was designed to be made out of metal or wood and 3D print that. Doesn't mean you can't.
Right.
But really, like, all our parts are designed with, where does this need to be strong? We need to orient it in that way. We need to bolster this area. We don't thread plastic, so we use either an inserted nut or threaded inserts, brass threaded inserts. But yes, you're right. A 3D printed part is not junk. This idea that they melt in the sun is not true. Even the lowest grade material, PLA, won't melt in the sun. I mean, even PLA, it's printed at 215 Celsius. That's its melting temperature is somewhere around 180 C, 170 C, somewhere in there.
Right.
We use PETG. The PETG we use is carbon filled. The heat deflection temperature on that is around 80 C advertised.
Right.
So we figure it's probably good to about 70 Celsius under tension. Heat deflection is when something will move or bend under load at a certain temperature.
Right.
So if you're shooting at 150 Fahrenheit, you're amazing, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and so we feel that the PETG material is heat resistant enough to tolerate any shooting situation. You can leave them in your car, but if it's the middle of summer and you live in Arizona, that might not be a good idea for any part of an air gun.
Yeah.
Especially a pressurized cylinder.
Especially if you got 4,500 PSI, your carbon fiber bottle.
Correct.
And you just transition 60 degrees.
Yeah, it's not a good idea.
That's probably not a good place to be.
These materials are incredibly strong when they're designed to.
Yep.
So the application has to be appropriate, the material selection has to be appropriate, and the design has to be appropriate. And obviously, the print quality has to be there.
Exactly.
To keep that product, strong.
And I have to admit, I came to 3D printing reluctantly because of my experience as a vehicle manufacturer.
Yeah.
We would have my job was to build those prototypes.
Okay.
design team says, here's a motorcycle, make these and test them before we go to production. Okay. Well, how production representative can I spend? Right. That's the question, right?
Correct.
I obviously can't tool up these parts to test them.
Right.
So I've got to find some rapid prototyping. And of course it's 10x the cost, right? In that world. And what I found was that when I used early 3D printing, I couldn't rely on those parts in durable environments where injection molding would win. But as we got better and better 3D printers and we understood 3D printing more, it became a godsend for us in that area of development.
Right. The advancements in material has been huge too over the last 10 years.
Absolutely.
I mean, huge. It used to be ABS. That was the king. And now ABS is still used, but there are other materials that have replaced it because they're easier to print. They have better dimensional stability. The shrinkage associated with ABS. So, yeah, I mean, it's now you've got polycarbonate blends that people are using that are really, really tough and durable.
I love polycarbonate.
The flexibles, the TPU, we love TPU.
Yeah.
We love it when it's applied.
Right. When you use it for the right application.
You know, using a variety of materials, exploring what's out there. And it's really important. You know, we're starting to look at multi-jet fusion. That makes really brilliant products. Parts are beautiful. They're strong, heat resistant. But comes down to cost. Those machines are, the HP machines are 6-figure machines.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Am I going to buy that or a mill? You know,
probably going to get the mill. It'd be a lot more cost effective.
Right.
Yeah.
More
That
flexible.
is so fantastic. David, I want to thank you for sharing your insights.
Bill, thank you, man. Thanks for
have you got
having a
any
discussion with me.
Any products that you can hint around to for our viewers that are coming soon? Yeah, so we have a prototype that it's not hidden, it's been out there. It was used by PJ Clark. It is a multi-rail, call it a tube clamp. Made of carbon fibers, not 3D printed. This is a molded carbon fiber component. Nice.
That's going to allow you to put rails on the side of the air tube and then underneath. And it is really stable. I mean, there's no movement. That thing is solid.
Nice.
So that's a part that we're working on. It's a work in progress. So we're able to produce them now. But we're looking at being able to do it more efficiently. So
scale it up.
But yeah, that's kind of a signal of what direction we want to move in and kind of materials we're going to be working with.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Well, thank you again, David. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And Airgun World, Black Arts Design. The link will be in the description below, and they'll also be in Patrick's show notes. So be sure to check them out and give them some love.
Right on, man.
Thanks, man. That was really great.
Well, welcome back, everyone. Bill, that was an awesome video. I really appreciate you finding time while I was out running around doing other stuff to get David to do an interview with you.
You know, Pat, when you give me people like that to interview, you make this job really easy. David
making me blush.
David was a joy to talk to. He really was. Once you got through his introverted engineer self and got him excited about what he was talking about, you could just see the smile take over his face and him get engaged in that conversation. And it was a joy to talk with him. And I think we've got a pretty interesting guest coming up on the next episode of the Airgun Geeks. And we've got one on the back burner that I am really intrigued with. And we'll talk about that one first. Her name is Kayla Nevius, and she is an extraordinary shot. She used to be in some type of youth prison or correction facility job, and she has decided she wanted to be outside and has just absolutely taken this outdoor world by storm. I told she's a competitor on a very, very popular Airgun television show. And I I follow her on Instagram where she has laid out
Mhm.
some really cool stuff for some hunts that she's doing right now. So if you want to check her out on Instagram, please do that.
Mhm.
She is extraordinary. We've talked about her before in the PA Cup results because
Correct.
she did exceptionally well for only her second pro
Yeah.
level bench rest. She placed 15th, and that to me is just extraordinary. So we're delighted to potentially have her on the show in the future. But coming up is an episode that, again, I want to thank you for setting me up with some really great interviews to do at the PA Cup. And this is Aiden Hansen, who works for Umarex. And Aiden and I get a moment to talk about the Nodos in depth. And it's really interesting to have the insider's view on that really fun little gun. So do pay attention, folks, because the next episode of the Airgun Geeks is going to be a heck of a lot of fun. And we're going to talk about all things Nodos.
So I'm excited.
No, me too. Me too.
Very excited just to see what he has to say.
Yep.
So, all right. So, like always, make sure you check out targetforge.net for all of your target needs and GX compressor needs.
Mhm.
Make sure you check out the YouTube videos that
Yes.
Bill's been putting out. They're very informative and a
And
little comical at
do
times.
subscribe to the Target Forge YouTube channel
Yes.
and the Airgun Geeks YouTube channel. Yours truly is the manager of both of those channels, and we are trying to grow those numbers and get the word out to as many airgunners as we can. So you can help us, number one, financially by joining or even just giving us a super thanks if you appreciated an interview or a segment that we talked about. Or you can also share that content. Get on the social media, get on the forums, and definitely rep the Target Forge channel and the Airgun Geeks channel because that helps us grow.
Yep. It takes everyone word of mouth, you know. A good friend of mine says paying for advertisement is punishment for bad word of mouth. And if we're doing a good job and you like what we're doing and have any ideas, tell your friends. You can also email us at the airgungeeks@gmail.com. Share your ideas or any improvements or topics you want us to talk about. We'd be more than happy to do that.
And if you want to send a message to only me and you don't want Pat to see it, then you can use Airgun Geeks plus Bill at gmail.com. And if you want to do it the other way and only let Pat see it, then it's Airgun Geeks plus Patrick at gmail.com. Now, why he didn't use the 3-letter version of his name, but elected to use the 3-letter version of my name, I don't understand how that happened, but I'm not gonna call him out on it, although I just did. Anyway, you can send a message to one of us directly by using that little trick, and it's just Airgun Geeks plus Bill or Airgun Geeks plus Patrick at gmail.com.
That's correct. And like always, stay geeky.